So, I want to share with you my thoughts on purpose and how it can power your pure fulfillment. And I'm going to do this by inspiriting you with a story about my father, who I truly believe up until the age of 45 was living his best life, mastering his contribution to the world. Now, I've been told that this is a pretty bold statement to make. My father lived another 40 years and he never actually expressed those words to me. But I lived with my father in those 45 years. And my sisters and I, during that time, we felt something magical from him. Something that I now call my father's power of pure fulfillment. It took 45 years for my father to grow this power of pure fulfillment, but it only took a few years for him to lose it. And it's that loss that I truly think is what sent me down this path to try and figure out, what does it mean to live our best life? Now, my father's power of pure fulfillment, it was logical. It was rooted in purpose, and it was mastered through his natural abilities. Purpose is who you are at your natural best. It is, in a statement, it is the action that you're going to take and the impact that it will have for others. Now, my father knew that every approach that he took, he could earn fulfillment, whether it was in work or play. But there was one approach that he took. It was the purest of them all. It was the one where there were no instincts of caution or burden of responsibility. It was the one where he could master his natural abilities and realize his purpose towards fulfillment. My father, from 1972 to 1977, was a silkscreen artist. And it is during that time that he could be his natural self. The only expectation that my father's art had of him was to keep his promise to the world, to simplify the complex so we could understand. That is my father's purpose. So when I say that my father was fulfilling his purpose, when he was engaged in this process, I like to say that he was on the path of pure fulfillment. This is the easiest way for my dad to realize his purpose. And I know that because when I asked him 2 weeks before he died, I asked him, why did he start making art? And he simply said, I didn't. It just happened. So with his purpose as his compass to simplify the complex so we understand, his art as his vessel, and as his natural abilities, as his paddles, my father could navigate his way home by the stars. He could break anything down to a mathematical equation. He was really gentle in his approach. He was always curious, and he was always creating. Now, to stay on the path of pure fulfillment, my father had the ability to be in what I call a state of wonder, where surprises actually reveal opportunities, ideas, and most importantly, solutions. It was here where he could indulge in research, he could ask questions, he would be open to new perspectives, and it's where he learned and determined the skills that he needed. So my father knew that there was no impact unless you followed through, meaning unless you take an idea, you create something tangible out of it, and then you share it with the world so that the world can experience it. My father created everything he needed to make his art, including this big table that had all these precisely drilled holes in it. And underneath those holes, they were attached to a vacuum that would just suck the paper to the table. So when you put the paint on, it didn't move. I, being the youngest, got to sit under the table and turn the vacuum on and off and on and off and on and off. And my sister Jennifer, she would take the screen and lift it up and down, up and down, up and down. And then my sister Wendy would take the finished picture over to the drawing rack, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I know he would have laughed or joked and said, I'm just using them for labor. But he knew that the power of his pure fulfillment in creating art would have impact on us. For an example, one of the pictures that my father created was called Far Fields Look Greener. It was these geometric shapes fading off into the distance. They looked like farmers' fields. He said it was just an exercise in color and that he was trying to make yellow fade off into green. But he was really simplifying the complex idea of mastery to us, because we can't focus when we're trying to master on the greener field, the reward. We have to focus on the field that we are in now. We have to plant the seeds of ideas, and the ones that don't grow, we leave them behind, and we take the ones that are nourishing us and everyone around us, and we plant them in the next field. And then we repeat this process over and over and over, not actually ever reaching the greener field, not focusing on the reward. Now, my father was an expert at landing every approach that he took. When one picture was finished, one show was over, he'd jump right back into that field, into that state of wonder, open to opportunities, ideas, and again, solutions. Now, at this point, the solutions were not just nourishing his art and himself, they were nourishing everything he was doing in his work, in his play, and it was nourishing everyone around him. Now, don't get me wrong. His art was not his happy place. This isn't where he went to relax. Because when he was doing his art, vulnerability, uncertainty, and criticism were around every corner on this path of pure fulfillment. But because he had his purpose as his compass, and he relied on his natural abilities, he trusted them, he could move right through them. It was at the age of 45 when he came to us with a new approach that he was going to take. He was going to start his own business. And we had full confidence that he could make the impact that he desired because we had watched him master, go from field to field to field. But something significant happened when my father started his own business. He stopped making art. The one pure thing, the one thing that showed him consistently who he was at his natural best, simplifying the complex so that we could understand. I asked him, why did you stop making art? And he said, I had to put food on the table. And it was at that moment that the burden of responsibility jumped right in his path of pure fulfillment. And it took him down a different road. Now, this is a noble pursuit to put food on the table. But the road that this burden of responsibility took my father down was one that didn't allow him to be in the state of wonder. It was a road that didn't allow him to use his natural abilities. My father couldn't be open to new ideas. He couldn't be open to new opportunities. And he couldn't find the solutions to get through vulnerability, uncertainty, and criticism. So, what happens when that happens? The shame and unworthiness starts to build. He could not leave some of those ideas that died behind and take what did nourish him and plant them in a new field. And the shame and the unworthiness locked him in. My dad was locked in, unable to nourish us, whether with food or his power of pure fulfillment. He couldn't nourish us, and he couldn't nourish anything he was doing, and he couldn't nourish anybody around him. My father stayed on this road for 40 years until one day we got a call. His girlfriend had decided it was time for him to move out. Now, if you had met my father, you would have thought he was a completely functioning man. But we knew, and interestingly enough, people would call him a free spirit. But for me, a free spirit is directionless. But we knew, we lived with this man when he had direction, when he had purpose. So when his girlfriend called and said it was time for him to move out, we were right there for him. We packed his bag, we packed his tools, and we packed his pictures, and we moved him into a condo. It took him a while, but at one point he allowed us to hang his pictures, and I can't tell you the magic that started to happen. This shell of shame and unworthiness started to break down. He started to nourish us and those who came to see him with stories of when he was living his purpose, mastering his natural abilities, and he shared us and nourished us with his art, talking about his practice. We call this year the Year of Magic. Unfortunately, my father had to move into a assisted living, and just the fact that he never actually allowed us to hang these pictures up was basically a signal that he wasn't going to stay there long. He tried to connect with others. He tried to connect with us, but he couldn't. So he made the brave decision to stop eating. And it was at this time that I had this conversation with my father. And I asked him, Dad, if you could be anywhere right now, where would it be? And he said, back in the condo, thinking of a picture called Waiting for Death. My father once again found himself back on the path of pure fulfillment, nourishing us and nourishing everybody around him, simplifying for us. Now, most people think that this path of pure fulfillment is only for artists or people that deem themselves creative. It is not. It is for anybody who wants to realize their purpose and master what comes naturally to them so that they can live their best life. Thank you.